everybody. About 2:30 in the afternoon, local time, here on the boat. On Thursday, the 18th of April, 2024. We're coming down near the end of the fourth week. The last week or so, more than a week, but it was a bit of a struggle keeping the boat going. The winds were continually fairly light, and constant thick overcasts coming down from the north. Occasionally big chunks of blue sky at the south, but pretty much overcast. Light rain squalls, sometimes a little heavier, but they didn't last long, the rain that is. Not a lot of wind in the squalls, except for one time in the middle of the night, of course. But other than that, it was a bit of a struggle keeping the boat going along just to maintain the 100-mile-a-day average. So yesterday, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, conditions stabilized. The wind was up, and it seemed to be stable. I kind of watched it through the day, and it was probably blowing, a good 15 knots, maybe getting up towards 20 once in a while. And we were sailing with the Genoa and a double reef main. Well, since that time, I had to go because the wind slowly continued to increase. It's blowing from the northeast. So I thought, well, we finally found the northeast trade winds, the real ones up here in the North Atlantic. Since then, I've gone from the Genoa to double reef main. I eventually had to drop the main because it was generating too much weather. Then this morning we dropped the Genoa because it was overpowering the boat, and put up the staysail, which slowed our speed down from averaging about 5 knots to about 4, a little over 4. Which was okay. I mean, we're getting close enough now to Barbados that zooming along at 6 knots is not going to make a big difference in how long it's going to take us to get there. The main problem being with only that smaller sail set, it didn't really dampen the rolling very much. So I said, okay, we'll drop the staysail, unhank the Yankee from the stay, unhank the Genoa from the stay and move farther aft, but leave it open, or leave it up there tied up to the lifelines just in case conditions go light again, and hoisted the Yankee. Well, that seemed to be the real sweet sail for these conditions, because the wind, of course, is still blowing from the northeast, and it's blowing a pretty consistent up near 25. We just had a little while here. I don't know, it wasn't really a squall line, but a slight increase in the wind. So from noon until just a little while ago, 2:15, had done 13 miles in a little over 2 hours. That's a 6.5 knot average, so a little sunshine really picked up the spurts and zooming in these conditions with the wind just about on the beam, a little bit after the beam, and depending if we sail off a little bit more west, and the apparent wind goes further aft, of course, the boat hits the gusts and wants to round up a little bit, then it comes more towards beam. I'm having to use the main rudder to help hold the boat off because even the Yankee is generating some weather help. But as long as conditions remain pretty consistent as far as assurance of the wind everything is working out just fine. The wind vane is steering the boat. Got some weather helm cranked into the main wheel. Got the Yankee set, and we're flying. I mean, absolutely flying. Got greenies fairly regularly, which means 25 knots, or certainly in the over 20, up to 25 knots, maybe a shade more than that wind strength. Regular seas are probably 2 meters. And the big ones in the sets are starting to get up near 3 meters. So somewhere, say, between 6 and 10 feet. When I came this way before, way back when, on Phoenix, I was finding a pretty regular wave pattern was 6 to 12 feet in the trade winds in the southern part of the North Atlantic, and that seems to be the case again. I'm very happy that we finally found the real northeast trade winds, because it certainly helps the boat speed, although, like I said, we're getting so down under 1,300 miles now. So even if we average 6 knots, that's 144 miles a day. If we average that much, which is pretty unlikely for, say, the next 9 days, at 100 miles a day, which is a 4-knot average, it's going to take 12 days. So even doing a 6-knot average would only take about 2 days off the passage time. So, like I said, we're getting so close. The distance is getting so short now that the increased boat speed doesn't really make a lot of difference in the duration of the passage. So today's the 18th. I guesstimated we'd get there somewhere around the end of April. So that's looking like the case. There's certainly going to be another 12 days or so. Maybe a little bit less. At the speed we're going now, we could pretty easily, from noon yesterday until noon today, did in a straight line 117 miles, so almost 5-knot average. The actual distance over the bottom probably was more than 120 miles. That's one thing I did is I went back and checked from Cape Town, and I added up the distances that are kept, because I had the track turned on the nav software, and that keeps track of the distance between each waypoint, which is pretty quick. Every couple of seconds it registers a waypoint in the database. Anyway, I added all that up a number of days ago, and we were up, let's see, straight line distance was about 1,900 or 2,000 miles, but by adding up all the tracks it was over 2,200 miles. So that's an extra 10% of distance traveled over that period of time. If that continues to hold true, then our 3,600 mile straight line passage will probably be a lot closer to 4,000 miles. That's from St. Helena to Barbados. Add another 1,800 miles from Cape Town to St. Helena, and that's 36, 46, 8, 5,400 miles since Cape Town when we get there. In something on the order of just less than 2 months. Anyway, it's a beautiful day. You can see I'm down to just a pair of shorts, probably in the low 80s. Wind's blowing up around 25. We got some sunshine, but there's been a consistent haze. That's why you see this white glow in the background. It's like a thin almost like fog covering most of the sky. There's almost no blue sky showing anywhere. Just this high layer of haze. A lot of moisture in the atmosphere. And right now we're just about, that'd be about northeast, some number of hundreds of miles northeast of the Amazon River basin where it empties out into the Atlantic. I know the recommended is to stay at least 150 miles offshore because the stuff that comes out of the Amazon River into the ocean can actually, it's muddy, fresh water, of course, and it can discolor the ocean out to 100 miles offshore. And of course, you got all that detritus that comes down out of the jungle. You know, in some cases, entire trees get flushed out to sea. So they recommend you stay at least 150 miles off the coast so you avoid the hazards of potentially running into some big chunk of stuff out there floating around. I guess the northeast wind catches that stuff eventually because the current dies out from the outflow of the river and pushes it back in towards the coast but further to the west. I don't know, I've never been there, so I haven't seen evidence of huge amounts of vegetation being driven up on the beaches along, let's see, that would be west to countries. There's little countries that are along the South American coast to the west of Brazil. So for now, everything's going along pretty well. Chased a few little leaks on the boat. Haven't had to do any real repair work. Everything is fine in my world. I hope it's that way for you as well, folks. Take care now. Bye.